When your mindset becomes congruent with where it is that you want to go, that's when success begins to happen.
Welcome to Shift, an exclusive podcast by DSN. I'm your host, Blake Mallen, and this is where high-performing entrepreneurs and experts share their most powerful shifts in mindset, skill set, and strategy to help you accelerate your business and amplify your impact. I challenge you to be present, open your mind, and let the shift begin. Welcome to Shift. I'm your host, Blake Mallen, and today's guest is someone who has lived and breathed this profession since he was 17 years old, starting very early, and since then has now built his career with loyalty, consistency, growing through some absolutely insane, unexpected challenges, and through all of it, maintaining a conviction and just an unshakable work ethic. And I love that he brings not only experience in this channel since 2005, but also coaching from some of the best, has worked alongside the likes of people like Tony Robbins and Grant Cardone, really, honing his coaching skills. Can't wait to dive in and get some insight from some of those chapters that have really shaped his communication style, his coaching approach, and his ultimate belief in just human potential. Today, he has become known across the channel for developing independent leaders through tangible skill development, high standards, and just a zero excuses mentality. He is driven, he is disciplined, and deeply committed to helping people become the best versions of themselves. And he brings a level of passion and clarity that has transformed the way thousands are approaching their leadership in the channel today. So excited for our guest. I know this is going to be insightful and valuable, so be present and help me welcome to the show, Puya Ghandian. Puya, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Blake. I want to let you know how honored and excited I am about our episode here together today.
Hey, I'm excited. Thank you for taking time away from your team and everything you have going on. Busy time of the year, and I'm so excited because I know you have a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom that I know is going to be valuable for all of our listeners that are tuning in and watching us here today. But let's just start. 17 years old. Like, tell me where this began. It's rare that I hear a 17, right, making this leap.
Yeah, it was not by plan, I guess you could say. I remember working at a grocery store. I was a student in high school, and I don't really even remember the conversation that took place. I just remember a woman walking through, the cash register line, and I was helping her with her groceries out to the car. And instead of a cash tip, she gave me a book that forever changed my life. It was my first personal development book. And next thing I know, I'm at her house with my mom, and I had no interest in joining her business, but my mother kind of leaned in and saw interest, and that's where my journey started. She went to her first hotel meeting, and then I was sent to the second one, and I just kept showing up, and I really became a student, developing my mindset, working on the 6 inches between my ears. And now it's just amazing to take that same knowledge that I learned from that first book and now to be teaching it to hundreds of thousands of people around the world. But yeah, I grew up in the industry, to say the least, and I'm just so grateful because I think it's the best industry. It's the best line of work. I love what I get a chance to do every single day. And it started at that very, very young age of 17 at that first book. So it all started with personal development.
I love it. The power of an invitation and now a couple decades of experience. And I know without knowing your full story, you can't be around this channel for that period of time without having some highs, without going through some lows and all of the seasons in between. So for those that don't know kind of your full story, give us a couple of those moments, right? When you look back over the last couple decades, what are some of the joy moments? What are some of the highlights? What are some of your go-tos when you're like thinking of the lifestyle you have? And then also, what are some of the challenging times that you're willing to share, some of the seasons you've been through? Would love to learn.
Absolutely. I think the biggest part was starting in the industry at somewhat of a younger age. A bigger part of it is that internal conflict of confidence, your ability to lead not just others, but starting with yourself. So, I remember always leaning in and being like, wow, I don't think I'm going to achieve success because of my age. And that was just something that would show up often as I felt like success was left for the, more mature people in life. And, overcoming that was a big barrier that has now opened the door to lead so many young people down the same path of success. And then I had to go through that period where I was in the same business for literally about 5 years. And I remember being stuck at the same exact level, which at that time was the rank of director. And I nicknamed it SAD, stuck at director. And I would go back to the same convention over and over again. We have our badges, and that same little director badge is at the bottom. So I could literally return to the same conference using the same badge if I wanted to. And being able to break through that was really another victory in my journey. Then transition into my current organization, where I've been blessed to have been with for over 14 years. I think that is something that I really pride myself in. I've never wanted to be that person that's had to leave through things that were out of my or within my control, and I've had the peaks, and I've hit the ranks that actually one person only in my entire business has ever done in our entire company, and I was blessed to have been able to do that back in November. And then I also want to let people know that yes, I've hit those peaks in my business, but those came after some deep valleys as well. And when you hit a rank and you've maintained it, you've never fallen back in your career, and then all of a sudden you're 5 levels lower, it kind of starts to play with your ego and your ability to think, am I worthy of leading people? Am I capable of it when I can't even keep my own self and my own business together? And then we've obviously had some times where we've had some regulatory challenges as well, which brings on a whole load of other stuff as well. But, each of those valleys led to the peak that is there. And, every time you hit another success point, you just see the tip of the next, mountain that's in front of you. And those have all led to where we are here today.
Well, there's a lot you just said for us to unpack. And I really appreciate, Puya, the transparency of sharing the valleys, right? And in my experience as well, it's like you can't get to those mountaintops without, the learnings that you get from the other side. So I want to dive deeper in a couple of things that you mentioned. And you mentioned regulatory. We'll get to that in a minute. Because I know you have had to endure and lead through a series of challenges that are pretty unique in this channel. So before we glean insights kind of from that period, let's go back to where you said, I love sad. Okay, so you were stuck. You were in a moment of stuck. What changed? What shifted? You're showing up, same place, same time, same people, no movement, doing the thing. And then all of a sudden, right, you're not. If you were to go back and kind of analyze, what were the shifts? What made the difference? What can you share?
I think I was the person that changed. I was the one that shifted. I was the one that was able to evolve in my own ability, not just in my mindset, but also in my skills. The reality is we are in a sales business. We are building sales organizations. And I think a lot of people shy away from that. They're like, no, we don't sell, we share. And I looked at sales as this thing that only happened to the lucky, right? If I got a sell or if I recruited somebody, that was of luck. And it wasn't until I went through some training and I learned from some of the best, wow, there's actually a process. There's a system to follow that if I do it right and if I develop the skill sets and I have the right mindset will lead to the desired outcome. So a big part of it was developing my own inner skills so that I could have the confidence to show up as a person. And one of my mentors have always said, people want to know that you know who you are, you know where you're going, and that you know how you're going to get there. And for me, during those 5 years of being stuck, that wasn't it, right? Matter of fact, a good friend of yours and mine, Nick, I remember one time making a comment that really shifted my life. And I realized that, I've got to put my hands on the steering wheel. I've got to be the one that drives this vehicle forward versus being in the passenger seat. So, my invitation to everybody here is to realize that you are destined for success. You are worthy of the dreams that you have in your heart and in your mind, and that you have everything you need in order to actualize it and to make it a reality, but to just realize there's some skills, there's some talents, there's some things that maybe need to be sharpened over time that will lead you to the desired outcome. So I'm very much of a talent-based, very much of a skill set developing type of person. I don't want to just like lead you to a promised land by hopes. I want to show you that you can do it and that you can turn around and lead other people down that same path through tangible action steps.
I love that. And I noticed you said years, right? You said 5 years, right? In that period. And, I know it's easy to look at someone like yourself now that's in like a thriving, season, right? A momentum season, a growing season, and not fully understand that those years, right? In kind of that stuck season. And I know there's probably a lot of listeners out there that feel like they're in that place. What coaching can you give them, right? For someone that is going through it, maybe they're contemplating, right, quitting or stopping or pausing, or they have what it takes, they have the doubt. What coaching do you give them? What can we do to kind of get on the other side and get into a more winning season like you're in right now?
Absolutely. I think where it came down to is I realized that if I were going to pursue any other career, if I were to go start any other traditional business, which I've gone down the paths, I've been on this back of the curtains of over 40 major companies around the world, inside and outside of this industry. And I realized that, the skills that I need to develop to succeed in any traditional business or career, interestingly enough, are the same ones that I would have to develop in order to succeed inside of my network marketing business. So, my invitation to people is, one, you have to have an end result in mind, right? If you opened up your navigation system on your phone, the first thing it does, it says a blue dot, you are here. This is your starting point. And you have to acknowledge, where is your starting point? Are you starting in a new business? Have you been in a place where you're sad and you're stuck at a certain level for a minute? Where is here? Where is the starting point? And that same thing could apply to your relationships. That same thing could apply to your health. That same thing could apply to so many aspects of your life. What is the starting point? But then in order to get the effective navigation and directions out of your, app, you have to put in the details of where you want to go. And I can't say, take me from Irvine all the way up to Los Angeles, because in reality, Los Angeles is a big city. So if I want to end up at your front doorstep, if I want to end up where your location is, I have to put in the street number, or the building number, the street name, the city, the state, the zip. So I invite people to get very clear. Don't talk about, I want to be success. Don't talk about, I want to make money. Give it the depth, give it the specifics that it deserves. And then you can chart your course going backward or, from there. And, there's times where you're navigating forward and navigation says, make a left. And for some reason, you're still going straight forward, but navigation knows the end destination. It reroutes itself. And I've learned that success likes speed. And when you know the direction of where you're going, which, you provide to people so much of by having different speakers on these calls, then it gives you the chance to navigate faster. It gives you the chance to drive forward faster. So my biggest thing that I invite people to do is, one, realize that you have to have clarity in where you want to go, because it's that clarity that's going to keep you in the game longer, right? What is the purpose behind what it is that you want in your life specifically? And then developing the skills that are needed. So for example, if communicating with people is an area that you need to improve on, my invitation is read the books. Surround yourself with the people that maybe have those skill sets that you desire. Maybe you don't have the capacity to inspire. Maybe you don't have the capacity to coach the way that you want. Read the books, learn from the John C. Maxwell's of the world, study the individuals that have spent their lives studying a specific topic, and then turn around and learn from it so that you can implement it into your own life. For me, it was all of that and sales. And it wasn't until I read a book on how to sell, and realizing that every part of your life involves sales as well. So I'm, again, very much of a, philosophy, mental, like what is it that you want to achieve? But then when you look at the action steps, this is a skills-based industry. And if I want to succeed in traditional business, or if I want to succeed in my network marketing or direct sales business, those skills are needed. And I very much am just a student, and I continue to be every day.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that you're highlighting both sides, right? Both the mind game, the belief set, right? And then also you're not running from like it takes
skills, right? If you want to excel. You've mentioned a couple of them, but let's say I'm brand new, right? Or maybe I'm going in and I want 2026 to be my year in direct selling. This is the year, right, where we want to achieve our goals, right? Have that end game become a reality. And I came to you and I said, well, what skills do I really need, right? In 2026, and what's happening now in the world, in our channel, the evolution of change, what do you think are the most important skills, right, that somebody needs to excel, right, in this channel today?
Yeah. So put it into a good, easy perspective for everybody. 80% of this game is going to be your mindset, right? 80% of it is going to be that 6 inches between your ears I mentioned earlier. And then the 20% is the how-tos. Okay. But it's how you do the skills and the how-tos that make a big difference. And I'm just going to go down to the pit of it. And that is sales. Right? Like you have to develop the skills of sales. And the reality is we all do it every single day of our life. If you're a parent, you're selling your children to go to bed, to wake up early, to go to school, to finish their homework, to eat their fruits and veggies. If you're a spouse, you literally sold yourself that you're the best thing on earth for that person to spend the rest of their life with. If you have a job, you sold yourself to that employer that you're the best candidate to fill that job. And the reality is that is something that I think so many people shy away from. And the reality is it's needed. You have to sell your team. You have to invite them to be able to be successful in this business. You have to reframe any excuses that they have. And so I'm going to take it down to sales. Develop your skill sets in order to be able to, and I don't think you commonly hear that, right? Because that is something that will kind of scare people off. But I'd rather speak the truth and what you want and need to hear to have the success versus, sometimes the warm and fuzzy stuff, which is important as well. But success tends to make people feel warm and fuzzy as well.
How do you define sales? Like, what does sales mean to you? Or if you could change the definition in everybody's mind, or in every dictionary or definition on the internet, what is sales?
Sales is the ability to compel somebody to see your point of view as the ultimate, right? As the best version. It's being able to convey the value of your product. It's able to convey the value of your leadership over one other. So that's just a simple way. It's this is the alternative. These are the best options. And this is why you should pursue this, or this is why you should not listen to your limiting belief, but instead this new reframed alternative that's being presented to you.
And if I want to get better at it, where do I go? Where do I turn? What do I do?
Well, there are sales masters, there's sales teachers, there's sales coaches that are out there. Grant Cardone is probably one of the biggest and best on the planet at what he does. Step aside from the personality differences that maybe exist there, the content, the principles for success in sales remain the same. And again, I used to think of it as this, wow, lucky, if I get there, it was a good day. Whereas today, it's definitely a step-by-step process to follow. And, for me, I wanted to learn what step 1 was. I wanted to learn what step 2 was. I wanted to learn the 3rd and 4th step in order to get to the close. And a lot of people just think sales is closing, where in reality, it's literally a greeting. It's a fact-finding process. It is a demonstration process. And, there's principles to making each one of those steps successful.
Well, you can definitely tell in just how you're communicating with us that you're a student, right? From that first book, right, at 17 that brought you into this channel, and the people you've chosen to associate with and align with, and anybody in the personal growth space, they're going to know the name Tony Robbins, right? And today you're probably going to know the name Grant Cardone, and you haven't just learned from their content. You worked with and for those organizations and had some proximity, right, with some of the best of the best. I'm curious whether it's Tony or whether it's Grant or any other, greats that you've had a chance to learn from. What are some of the maybe unexpected lessons that you got, right, from your time and your proximity in any of those organizations?
Yeah. So I always point out to people when I mention that I used to work for Tony and Grant, I'm not talking about I paid for a or for a class and got this certification, right? Which I think is amazing for everyone to do, right? I'm talking about interviewed, hired, paid, trained 8 months underneath them before speaking to my first client. Okay. So there's definitely a lot of information that's there. I think the biggest principle that I continue to have stamped in the back of my brain is that when your mindset becomes congruent with where it is that you want to go, that's when success begins to happen. And I remember having a coach, and I remember hearing from this individual like, oh, well, like, how's your business going? And then I would start describing the reality of what my business was. And it wasn't until I had that reality check of, no, I need to describe my business as it's about to be, right? And I don't look at that as rah-rah wishful thinking. I literally am speaking into existence what it is that I want. And that doesn't mean being a pessimist or anything like that. That just means, what is the language that you use? Because, they say stand at guard at the white pearly gates. And my transliteration of that is the teeth, right? Stand at guard at the words you use to speak of your circumstances. That doesn't mean don't be real, but that means what is it that you want to create? Because what you speak of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, And again, I mentioned it earlier, but people want to know who you are, where you're going, and they want to be around somebody that can inspire a group of people. And that's one of the things that I'm super proud of, is not just retention of our leaders, but people that have honestly, I believe, became my leader in a sense. I tell them all the time, I wish you were my upline, because they've gone out there and have just been a student the same exact way. And that's really what I live myself by, is always learning, always wanting to sharpen my axe and become the best version of myself. But that was a very pivotal moment when I made that distinction within my own mindset. Where is it that I want to go? Let me live in that congruent way starting now.
I love that. And so true, right? You got to speak it into existence. You got to believe it before it's real. I'm going to ask you maybe, Puya, kind of maybe a weird question, right? I don't think I've ever asked this to a guest or maybe even anybody ever. But we have what you're saying, right? A vision of what's possible, speak it into existence, right? Your end in mind, everything you're giving us with such amazing energy. Also at a time where people are kind of overhype, like we're at this kind of interesting time where authenticity and transparency and just be real and vulnerability, is different today than it was like 5 years ago or 10 years ago. How do you look at these two things, right? Like what you're saying that you believe, and also not wanting to come across like overhype or, over promotion or things that might be inauthentic. Like, how do you reconcile that?
So it's an interesting question that you're asking. And I've actually came across this where I've had leaders, they're like, don't future us, right? Don't future us. And it kind of put on these guardrails of like how I led and showed up in the world. Because what went through the back of my head constantly is don't future us, don't future us. And when I wasn't futuring, my business wasn't thriving. And I realized that people need to have a vision that they can be a part of. I need to have something that I can be a part of that is bigger.
I love it. I mean, I think it's so true. And it is. It's like, here's the facts of what we've done, and here's the vision of where we're going. And it does take both. What guidance would you give to maybe someone, Puya, that isn't 20 years in, right? What if I'm in kind of my beginning phase of my journey and I'm sitting here going like, I have this vision, but I don't maybe have a lot of facts yet. Like, how do I show up? What coaching would you give me?
I would encourage you to rely on the support system that you're around, right? Obviously, for me, I had to borrow other people's vision. I had to align myself with a mentor that had the character that I was proud to surround myself with. And I really didn't have that vision. It was kind of like I had my carriage and it was attached to someone else's, right? And I carried my business forward through that time along their vision. So my encouragement is realize that this is a business where you're going to rely on a lot of other people, and you're going to tell people this is where I'm going, and people need to know that you believe it and that you're going with or without them, and the right people will align themselves with you. But I too was starting in this industry, didn't have that vision, and I had to rely on the vision of other people that I was around, whether that was my upline, which I don't have today, or whether that was the CEO of my company. And that's actually something that was another big takeaway from Nick as well, is just like attach my carriage to someone that was going where I wanted to be. And now that I have the posture and I have the success and I have the story and I have the confidence, it's kind of like, sir, thank you so much. You can now step aside because I will carry this forward for us, right? And I think that's what I teach with everybody that joins my business, is to kind of rely on us, rely on the team that's around you, bring us in for that three-way call, leverage us in in-person meetings, which I'm a big advocate for, which I know is not so much of a popular thing these days in the industry as well. But I think a lot of the systems that we have, the company, all of that is going to play an important role in giving you and your team the confidence and the vision until you kind of develop your own.
It's so true. And we all start there, right? We all start with, the excitement of the future. We want to believe it. We don't exactly see it. And we have to borrow the certainty, right, from people around us to get us moving. And then pretty soon we have those facts, right, based on how we're showing up and, what we're consistently doing. Puya, I know right now, and you can feel your confidence and your certainty and the energy you're giving us. You're in a winning season, right? You're in a forward season, which is amazing. And you've shared some huge numbers, right? But I also know you said 14 years, right? 14 years with your current company. And we won't go into specifics here, but I know the story. And for the listeners out there, Puya has been part of a company over the last 14 years where to say it hasn't been easy would be the most dramatic understatement. You mentioned earlier valley seasons. I'll go on and say I'm sure there's been some deep, dark valley seasons, right, with what you guys have had to go through. And for context, everybody, listening, the company Puya has been a part of for the last 14 years went through in that period some of the hardest regulatory challenges, FTC battles, really truly a war season. I'll use those words, and has come out the other side. And, all of us, no matter what company we're a part of, if you stay in this game for 14 years, you're going to go through highs and you're going to go through lows and you're going to go through seasons, and there's going to be winning seasons and losing seasons and learning seasons. That's just normal. We all go through the stuff, but most companies don't go through the type of battle, right, Puya, that you have led through in your current company. And what I'm most interested in is without getting into like the details and the specifics and, the regulatory environment and all the stuff, right, that's happening through our channel. My first question is, what made you choose to stay and stick it through?
That's probably a fantastic question that requires a lot more time, but I'm going to go back to what we started with is, what is the end result? What is the end goal, right? When you know what it is that you want and you know the reasons behind why you want it, it makes sticking around a lot easier. I also feel that for me, I knew we were in the right. Right? I knew what they were doing. I knew that they were overstepping their bounds. And I had unfortunately seen the same thing in a lot of other companies. And, I think one of the biggest bold things that happened was our leadership executive team, they also were aligned in believing that we were in the right. And to have leadership that knew that, to the point where they said, you know what? We're not going to sit around on the sidelines and let them do to us what they have done to so many other companies, right? Out of fear tactics. Instead, we had leadership that were bold enough to actually turn around and sue the federal government themselves before they even had the opportunity to come and attack us, right? And I think that bold step kind of gave us that leadership to know, wow, these are people that are going to fight for us, because they could have easily folded. They could have easily shut down and caved into the desires of the FTC. But when they knew they were right, they knew they had to step up and protect not just our company and not just their field leaders, but to protect our industry, as if you really think about it, because we actually put a fence further back than where they wanted to bring the industry. And now that's kind of become a standard law, if you really think about it, because now other companies have a little bit more of a clear guidance on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And I think, how did we retain 98% of our leadership during that time? It was because we were very convinced that we were in the right, to the point where even our, leadership team, our executive teams, they said, listen, we're not not going to put up with this. It was a David and Goliath type of battle, if you think about it. Millions, tens of millions of dollars, 20 plus millions of dollars, 8 years of defense later, it was difficult, right? And to be honest, we had to build our business somewhat outside of this industry. And because 80% of our revenue comes from customers, and because we already had such a well refined customer system, that's I think what allowed our entire leadership team to stay put during that whole time, to now be able to celebrate victoriously on the other side. But it was not easy. It took a lot of belief, not just in our capacity as field leaders, but also our belief in our executive leaders as well. But it was a valley. It was probably one of the toughest valleys we've been through, but now it's given us pillars of strength to step on and kind of shout from the rooftops that we are the best industry that's out there. And if you want to go start a traditional business, do it. But I'm still convinced that we have the best model that's available out there.
Well, just a lot of respect and appreciation to you, right, and your entire leadership team, because I know that couldn't have been easy, and there had to be moments of doubt, no matter the mindset and no matter the leadership, and it could have been very easy to stop, to quit, to give up, right, to go elsewhere, and there could have been any number of excuses on the shelf that you and your leadership could have taken, and people would have accepted, and you didn't, right, and you led through. And it's not only a huge victory for obviously you and your team and your company organization, but it's a victory for the channel. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of the whole channel, right, for the example you guys are setting. But down to like a leadership layer, you mentioned, I love what you just said, like, the valley to the pillars, the strength. So now that you are on the other side, how are you better? Like the you of today, the community you guys are of today, in what ways are you better because of that season that maybe you wouldn't have, right, as who you are and what you're doing today had you not gone through it?
Yeah, we can even label the Valley season as a character building season, right? A lot of character building came out of that. And I think the biggest thing that we've been given after the victory with the FTC is our voice. It's our voice. It's our ability to be able to speak. And that was taken away, right? That was taken away. A lot of people were like, I didn't even know you were in business still. I didn't even know you guys were open. I thought you guys were gone and out. And no, we're here 14 years later and louder and prouder than we were before. So what was it that we got? What was it that our leadership was able to develop is a voice to speak louder. And now we're standing on pillars. Now we're standing on mountaintops, and we're proud to speak of our products. We're proud to speak of our compensation plan. We're proud to speak of our leadership team. And that was something that it was more of like a silent conversation, right? It wasn't go post on social media left and right, because if you think about it, you look at my posts over that 8 years, I was a silent guy. I didn't have a voice. I didn't feel I had it, but I didn't feel like it was worth speaking of it, right? And now that's just a completely different thing. Now I'm confident, I'm proud, not just of our channel that you keep referring to, but of our business and the team that we built up until this point too. And I think that's what a lot of people need to develop in this business is your own voice. And I think that goes back to, you know who you are, you know where you're going, you know how you're going to get there. And for that period, that was taken away. I didn't think people wanted to listen to that. And that was the actual truth, right? Many people, even in the industry, would not look at us because we were like that off to the side, like non-existent in most people's mind. But now it's like, no, we're here. We've been here, and we're going to continue to be here as a leading organization in the channel.
I love it. And it's so true, right? We all go through our own version of our valleys, and they might not be as public as what you guys went through, or maybe even as difficult as what you guys had to navigate. But when we go through them, we emerge on the other side different in some way, and many times stronger, right? In many ways, which is awesome. So kind of the season you're in now, right? We're in forward motion. We have the wounds and the wisdom of what you guys have gone through and led through. And you're a couple decades now, right? Into this channel. Where are we going? What's the vision look like? Like, what are you seeing right now that's working, right, within, within the direct selling industry as we're in 2026 and the state of evolution today? Like, what excites you? Give us Puya's crystal ball. What's working? What do you see, and where are we going?
We know where we're going, and we have the list of ingredients on how we're going to do exactly that. And that was just not something that we were bold enough to utter out of our mouths before, right? But now, the field leadership, the corporate executive leadership, we know where our end destination is. It is closer in sight than we've ever been in the past before. And, I think that's something that has really inspired not just our, existing leaders that have stuck through this 8 years, but really the leadership that maybe has transitioned from us over the 14 years of us being in business, because this regulatory issue was not the only issue that we've had over our time. There are probably some very severe, just as massive, big ones that were just as public, but that's where we're going. That's what we're designing ourselves to do. And with that's going to come not just a transformation of a lot of lives with the amazing products that we have, but the transformation of a lot of people's finances. And I think what we're creating today will be spoken of for generations of people to come in this industry. And we just want to do it the right way. We want to do it with integrity. We don't want to do it playing a lot of the games that unfortunately we've seen in the past, that you've been around a lot and witnessed firsthand. But we want to go do it. We want to do it with a proud, with our shoulders back, and we just want to leave a blazing trail of joy and of character and of honor and of integrity. And we just want to be a shining example of what can be for people that want to build this business in the right way, and to have one of the only victorious lawsuits ever in the history. You look at every major company in this industry, multi-billion-dollar annual companies, they've had their moments of defining, where they had to come against, some FTC battles, and, some of them just didn't battle, right? They either kind of folded their model, or they shifted out of the model or the industry or channel that we're in. And, we're just excited that we were able to stand proud and to show that, listen, you can be a government agency that doesn't want the best for this channel, unfortunately, right? So that's just something that we're excited about working towards.
That's a beautiful vision. And I love just how powerful of a story it is around reinvention. Because I do think there's a lot of companies and communities and leaders right now that are in their own season of reinvention. So I guess my question for you is, let's say I'm with my company, right? I'm passionate. I have a vision. I'm getting the energy that you're giving us on, this conversation today. And, I want 2026 to be a reinvention year. But let's say I'm in a situation where there is a valley, there is doubt, there is any number of excuses I can choose to believe if I want. Give me your guidance, right? Give me your leadership, right? I'm in the valley right now. I'm in a season of reinvention. I'm really contemplating if I have it in me to get to the other side. You're someone that's lived it, right? You're through it. What perspective can you give?
The first thing that I'll tell the listeners that are going through that valley season is that you will get through this as long as you have the vision for it. Comfort is the most expensive thing that you'll ever buy, and it costs you your potential every single day. So understand that whatever hope, dream, want you have inside your heart, inside your mind, God would have never put that there unless you had everything within you to make it happen. And, if you're in your business and you've been sad, you've been stuck at director or wherever that is, understand that that's exactly where you're supposed to be. And your speed at how fast you develop the skills that are needed are going to help, speed up that process for you to arrive at your end destination. So keep in mind that you have to have that clear goal. You need to know where is the blue dot on your phone right now. You need to put in complete specific detail where it is that you want to go. You need to come out with a list of the reasons why it's important, because the reality is motivation is going to get you started, but discipline is what's going to cross that finish line for you. And, the action steps, the accountability, hiring a coach is going to probably be important for you. Having the right mentors, being around people of positivity. There's no room for negativity, right? In a world where negativity is all around us every day, we don't have to seek that out. So when you've got this scale that's one side of negativity and the other that's positivity, you need to feed the hope. You need to feed the dreams. You need to feed the desires that you have. And eventually the negativity will be outweighed.
So good and so true. And I hope you guys rewind that section and listen to it like 10 times, because Puya just gave you the blueprint, the roadmap, and specific, right, practical, tactical things you can do to get through, to reinvent, and to make this season the winning season. I want to be mindful of our time, and I want to leave some time at the end for anything on your mind or your heart that we haven't gotten to. And you have already given us, so much in the conversation here. But before we get to kind of some closing thoughts, can we just do like a rapid fire round, like a lightning round, just like quick answers? I'm going to ask you 3 quick questions. Does that work for you?
It works for me. Let's do it.
Okay, so these are similar questions I've asked most guests. There's no right or wrong answer, and it's really in the nature of kind of the theme of shift, right? And when we talk about shift, we're not just talking about the world, right, that we're in and how fast it's evolving. That's true, or what's going on within direct selling, which is also true, but it's really the stuff you've been giving us in today's conversation. It's the mindset shifts, the belief shifts that allow us to unlock what's next for us. And you've already given us insight into a lot in your own journey, but let's look at kind of your professional life, right? From that 17 years old in that book, right, to the years it's sad, to the restart and all the peaks and the valleys, and a season, right, of battle, and now on the other side. And if you were to look at your professional journey, the Puya of today versus that 17-year-old, and just say, what's one of the most significant belief shifts that has allowed you to create the organization that you have today, right? The lifestyle you're living today? What shift comes to mind?
That I had to put my hands on my steering wheel of life. I had to put my hands on my steering wheel of my business and not be the passenger. For so long, I was just waiting for direction. I was waiting for leadership to lead me. I was waiting for somebody to come to my rescue. And it wasn't until I realized I'm my rescuer. I'm the person that's going to help make this change. This is the person that needs to take accountability to create that shift. So I think for you, you just have to understand that you are the one that's going to lead your business. Yes, all the uplines in the world will be there. Yes, you'll have the books and the leadership, but it's until the moment that you take ownership, right, in your life. And it's almost like, you don't really have a child. You don't become an adult, right? Like there's that moment where you go from child to an adulthood. And I think there's that moment in your business where you're not that child anymore and you step into, I'm the leader. And it's time for me to lead me first, and then the people will follow afterwards, right? And I've just been very focused on not developing followers, but to develop leaders that in their own right, I think are so much more far greater. And I become a student to my own team every day as well.
I love it. Beautifully put and absolutely true. Second one, same question, but your personal journey. So put the business aside, the accolades aside, the ranks, the lifestyle, the achievement aside, like you as a leader, right? You as a person, you as a human today, from where you began. What has been some of the most significant shifts in your life that has allowed you to become who you are today?
It goes back to having that end result in mind. And for me, it wasn't until what was very clear about what do I want out of a personal relationship, right? What is it that I want my family life to look like? For me, I'm so intentional because I spend a family night once a week on Mondays with my family, parents, sisters, her people. So like for me, I look at that and I ask myself, what does the end result? And the same goes with my health, right? No one's going to come and tell me, cut that soda out. No one's going to come and tell me, cut that fast food out. But it's until the moment I make the decision, knowing where I want to go, and I take responsibility. And that shift is what, that's what leads to that shift, is that personal ownership that you take.
I love it. And last one, kind of an aspirational question, a visionary question. And we'll go back to that channel conversation, because Puya, sometimes I sit and think about just like the collective power of every company, every community across our channel, every brand, every product, every service. And if somehow we could just like unite everybody, every promoter, distributor, consultant, ambassador, influencer, whatever we call ourselves across the world, like if you had the power to snap your fingers and you could give every single person in this channel a single belief shift right now, what gift would you give them?
I would give them the vision that success is closer within reach than what they think. So many people think that success is down the road, way down after I do this. But in reality, it's when you begin to do this that success is going to start to happen. And I remember thinking, once I hit this rank, I'm going to start this. And it wasn't until I realized I do this, and that takes me to my rank. So whatever you're thinking I'm going to do down the road, whatever you think I'm going to do later, my invitation is that you start doing that now. And in our specific channel, you can lead till you're blue in the face. But I believe the highest paying activity that anybody can do is to lead yourself and to do the highest paying activity, which is taking people from not knowing to knowing about your products and your business opportunity. And the faster you do that, and with more people you do that, the quicker you're going to end up arriving at your end result. And honestly, that's a big conversation I have with a lot of my leaders. I have a lot of people that are like, okay, I'm ready to get my head back in the game. And all of a sudden they want to go lead their team. And I'm like, no. Lead yourself, and your team will follow by the example that you have set. And, there was a moment where I was checked out. I was not mentally there. But it wasn't until I made the decision, okay, I'm not going to step back and start leading my team, because the best thing I could do for my team is to show them what's possible. And now everybody's seeing the accolades. Now everybody's seeing the success that we've created up until this point. But they didn't realize that all the work that happened in private is what's led to that. The 1.5 to 2 years of just not being seen, not posting, but doing the activity of getting in front of people belly to belly is what's led to an accomplishment that I dreamed about only 4.5, 5 years ago. So I think that's going to be the biggest key right there.
I love it. It's so true. And you've given us so much today, right? I mean, I love your story. It is a story of what's possible. I love that you've weaved in, right, all of the belief and the mindset and the shifts and the things that you've learned from the greats that now you're pouring into others. I love that you're also focusing not just on the mindset, which is the majority, but skills and reframing, right? And redefining what sales even means, right, today in terms of conveying something we're passionate about. And I think, Puya, just your story with what you have been through and now on the other side, what you are creating around the world, it shows us what is possible. And no matter how hard the valley or, how tough the hit, we can endure, we can get through, and we can grow through, right? And emerge on the other side stronger because of it and those pillars that you mentioned. So much today. And I know anybody listening, regardless of the season they're in, they can glean value for themselves and for their team. So before we kind of round out, today's conversation, is there any other closing thoughts or anything else on your mind or your heart you want to leave us with?
I think the best thing for people to remember is that regardless of what your end destination is and your goal is in any area of your life, you're going to go through the fire, right? Life is going to throw you the fire. And what's important is that you reemerge out of the fire, maybe as the fire, right? And then just take that fire and just share it with as many people, because it's your little fire, your little belief, your little vision, your little desire that's going to ripple into the lives of other people. And that one ripple could change the life of so many people. And that's what so many people have done. Blake, with your podcast, with so many other leaders, my unique experience of having worked for Tony, I was a coach for some of the top producers in this industry, twice my age. And I have massive respect for everybody in my organization, outside of my organization, because I don't see it as us against each other. I see it as us in this channel against the rest of the world, because we have the greatest thing on the planet. We are the best industry and channel that exists. And my goal is to help people see that as much as possible.
I love it. It's a beautiful vision. And I know that our time today, Puya, away from your team and everything you have going on at a busy time of the year, it is going to make a difference. And for everybody listening, I hope you listen and re-listen and share, because there's something from today's conversation that can make 2026 your year. They can make this year different than last year. This can be your reinvention season. It's time to get out of that sad or stuck, right? If that's the season you're in, and emerge into the other side. And it is possible. And Puya, thank you for everything you're doing, not just within your team, everything you have done really to fight for our channel, to show what is possible and what is right, and to continue to be an example, right, for so many entrepreneurs out there, that if you just show up with the energy that you've given us here today and pour into others, you can get to the goal and live the lifestyle that you want. So appreciate your time. You guys, you can listen and re-listen to today's podcast and all of our previous guests at shiftpodcast.com. Make sure you share this with someone on your mind or your heart that you can get value from. We're here to serve, right? We're here to grow, and we're here to do it together. Until next time, let's make the shift. Thank you, Puya. Appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. Have a fabulous day, everybody.